Former President Jacob Zuma's application for a permanent stay of prosecution has been dismissed by the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Zuma's legal team's reliance on the National Prosecuting Authority's 15-year delay to prosecute and allegations of political interference in the case against the former president have all failed. A full bench at the High Court in Pietermaritzburg has this morning ruled that Zuma must stand trial for his alleged offenses. Earlier this year, the former president had applied for his case to be permanently halted. He is facing charges of corruption, money laundering and racketeering, some of which relate to the multi-billion rand arms deal. Zuma's lawyers claim that he does not have the money to fund his corruption trial defense, but the state successfully argued that Zuma has no evidence to prove his claims of political meddling and will now proceed with the prosecution after stating they are ready for trial.
The application brought by Jacob Zuma under case number CCD 30/2018 is dismissed with cost, such cost to include those consequent upon employment of 2 counsel. And 6, the application brought by Thales South Africa Pty Ltd under case number D12763/2018 is dismissed with cost, such cost to include those consequent upon employment of 2 counsel. I hand down the judgment.
So let me take you live then to the KwaZulu-Natal capital. Our provincial bureau chief there, Ziyanda Ngcobo, is on standby and joins me live now. So Ziyanda, the gavel has fallen and former President Jacob Zuma, we saw him leaving the court. Tell me about the highlights of this judgment. Was there anything that went Jacob Zuma's way in those various applications there?
Well, not at all, Tulas. In fact, it took less than 3 minutes to essentially crush the former president's dreams of not standing for that corruption trial. But, of course, we know this might not necessarily be the end for him. He could still file an application for leave to appeal this judgment in the Supreme Court of Appeal. And I'm now joined by editorial contributor Karen Mourn. Karen, it was always going to be a short judgment, but you've got papers in front of you. You've actually got it in your hands. And what are the fundamental issues that the judges have raised for them to dismiss this application with costs?
Well, obviously, we're skimming through this judgment because we have just got it. But I think one of the main pertinent points was, of course, you and I discussing earlier how Jacob Zuma had continuously said that he should have been tried with Shabir Sheikh. The court ultimately saying, as we see it, even if a joint trial would have had some benefit for Mr. Zuma, of which he was deprived as a result of his prosecution being separated from Mr. Sheikh and the Ngcobo group, it does not constitute prejudice of any kind which would impact on the fairness of his trial. Any delay during this period would be justifiable if one has regard of Mr. Nguka's explanation and the fact that the investigations were ongoing. So this court exonerating Bulelani Nguka of that averment which Jacob Zuma has continuously raised about saying that there was a prima facie case against him in that media briefing and then failing to actually prosecute him. Also, interestingly enough, the court, looking at the decision by Mokatedi Mshe, the spy tape saga, Jacob Zuma contending again in this application that those spy tapes clearly showed political machinations behind the scenes, that he was being politically targeted. Of course, we know Leonard McCarthy, Bulelani Nguka again, caught in recordings discussing the timing of when he would be charged. The court saying ultimately the seriousness of the offences that Mr. Zuma is facing outweighs any prejudice which he claims he will suffer if the trial proceeds. Furthermore, the reputational harm which he claims to have suffered goes hand in hand with being charged. In any event, this does not seem to have prevented him from ascending to the highest office in the country, being the President of the Republic. So really like firm rebuttals here on this contention that he has been a victim of their political machinations. Court seeming to reject the Sheikh argument, rejected the Moshe argument. Obviously, we are going to continue reading this, but two very important insights into this judgment at this time.
So essentially, with what you've just told me, the fact that he was even able to ascend to become the president of the country shows that whatever may have happened materially and circumstantially didn't even impact on his, career prospects.
Well, this was the key argument that he advanced, was that, it was clear from the recordings on his version that Bulelani Ngcuka, Leonard McCarthy were determined to try and influence his prospects of success when he took on Thabo Mbeki in 2007 for the leadership of the ANC. And the court ultimately saying, well, evidently you became the president. You became the president of the country. So the spy tapes recordings in and of themselves don't necessarily constitute something that caused massive prejudice to you. Also, this court very much aligning itself with the view taken in the Nicholson decision by the SCA, in which the court said essentially, even if there is kind of a, maleficent kind of motivation in terms of why a prosecution is pursued, unless that motivation taints the evidence, it's really not, massively prejudicial to the accused. Unless there's been abject interference with evidence, with substantive issues that the accused has to address, it cannot be said to constitute something that would cause you to withdraw charges, that would cause you to stop a prosecution.
Well, there you have it, Tulasi's editorial contributor, Karen Moore, going through just, a few pointers that came out of that judgment, which ultimately saw his application for a permanent stay of prosecution dismissed with costs. But Tulas, I also want to talk about, how the former president looked just after the announcement. He seemed to be a man who is not wounded, smiling, jovial, just before he walked off, greeted journalists who had huddled around him to get, visuals of what his face was looking like, what was going to happen. And I must say, unlike the previous court appearances, he will not be addressing supporters. He's already left the court precinct, and some of the only people who were present in the public gallery are the leaders of these organizations and formations that have been supporting the former president throughout this trial, including church leader Vusi Dube, Andile Mqedama was also present in court, as well as leaders of the ANC, particularly from the Moses Mabhida region, were also there to show support. I could actually hear Misha Khadebe saying, well, we were always to expect this outcome. So now we wait to see what the former president will do. Will he then, file an application for leave to appeal? Or will next week, Tuesday, be a day where a trial date is set by both legal teams?
Yeah, Ziyanda Ngcobo and Karen Mon, I love your work. Quick off the mark, of course, with getting that particular judgment, that document, and sort of skimming through some of those details that are absolutely crucial. That is Ziyanda Ngcobo live for us in Pietermaritzburg.